doing hands-on stuff and still do. And the benefit and the strength I get from it is really invigorating. And so I wouldn't put down like any kid that's in high school that's wanting to do, something like this, for 20, 25 years. Like, I think it's a great thing, and I think it's very beneficial.
No,
So
more than putting them down, encourage them. Like tell
yeah,
them to do
yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Definitely encouraging. We won't be putting them down for sure.
Hello, and welcome to Class and Climate, a podcast from the Green Economy Network and the Broadbent Institute, where we see how the end of the world meets the end of the month. I'm Nick Pierce. We'll start with 2 million. That's how many workers are expected to be directly and indirectly employed by the Canadian clean economy by 2050, according to a 2023 report by the Pembina Institute and the Canadian Labour Congress. At the Green Economy Network, we like to hammer home that essential fact that climate action means more jobs for workers. And that's certainly true. But on another level, this is a train that has already left the station. Every day, workers in Canada are finding jobs in renewable energy and the green economy. But what's the actual experience of workers transitioning from work in the fossil economy to work in the clean economy? What are the concerns of renewable energy workers? And how can we support union organizing in that sector and encourage worker voice in those workplaces? We have the perfect guest to flesh out what that could mean in a worker's life. Alex Connolly is a renewable energy worker in Nova Scotia who has a familiar life story. He left Atlantic Canada to work in the oil sands and didn't like what he saw there. Now he's back home and helping make our country's energy grid cleaner by installing renewable energy capacity. Alex will share his story and help shed light on a worker's perspective on the green energy transition. Thank you so much for joining us, Alex. Could you very briefly just tell me why you started working in the oil sands to begin with?
I think I started working in the oil sands because it's been mostly told to me growing up that going west for work is like beneficial for money and if you want to get ahead in life. So that's sort of the idea. I kind of thought of going out west as like ka-ching. This is where I'm gonna make it big and make some big money. So.
Right. So what sort of work were you doing out there?
I went out as like a laborer, but I also had experience with heavy equipment, so I could operate a dozer and excavator.
Okay. And like, I don't know, could you just like describe what it was like from like just someone working out there? Like, what were the work conditions like? How were things?
Yeah, so I got picked up at the airport and drove with this guy on this really narrow highway all the way out to Fort McMurray. And kind of a little bit of my adrenaline was going pretty good because he was driving pretty fast down that highway. And just in the like middle of really nowhere, I was working in this camp and it was kind of dark. Like I was working night shift and just taking a bus full of just strangers into the middle of nowhere and then coming up on this big refinery with like all this sort of pipes and all this smoke and everything like that. And I was just like, wow, this is the different place. I never been somewhere like this before. So it was really different for me.
Right. You kind of come to like this weird alien environment. You're surrounded by strangers. Like, how does it feel to live in that sort of conditions? Like, I know there's some substance issues in the oil sands, like a lot of workers kind of engage in unhealthy habits. Like, could you tell me more about that?
Yeah, for sure. Like my first thoughts was it was just like almost like a jail, to be honest, because it was like you had these dorm style encampments that you had a room that was like very small and you would just sleep there and then you'd walk down these super bright hallways down to the lunch area and join all the other men for supper. And yeah, I began to find out that like the majority of these people were like really just sort of like abusing themselves. Like it seemed like they were sort of having problems with drinking and on their time off they would go and spend their money recklessly in the cities of Edmonton and Calgary and they would come back and they just looked like they were worn out and worn down and people were very irritable and like I didn't feel that comfortable. Like there was a few people there for sure that were like, they had wife and kids and everything like that. They went out there for just one reason, just to make the money and come back. Like, I kind of stuck around them people and they kind of protected me because I was pretty young. I was like, I think I was like 20 years old or something like that. So,
Oh yeah, no, that's pretty, especially to be in that sort of environment. And then I guess it's good that you sort of found that community, I guess, but it also what you're saying kind of what hits to me is a lot of times the argument for like the oil sands and that sort of thing is like, look at the salaries these workers command, these are good jobs. But there's sort of a flip side to that too.
yeah, for sure. There's definitely a big flip side. Yeah.
Mm. So I guess compared to like those sort of working conditions, work in renewable energy, I believe putting up turbines in Nova Scotia, like how does that compare to working in the oil sands? Is it a completely different environment?
Yeah, I just noticed that the team environment was different. Like going to work every day just seemed like the people that I worked with were, well, they were locals. They had their families. They went to home every day. They had their other things going on, like activities that they would do, and so just the general vibe was like a lot more positive and just really sort of nice to be around.
You're also closer to home, I guess. Like I think you had a pretty common story, which is people from Atlantic Canada moving to the oil sands, for the work opportunities. And that I guess does that have effects on like communities and like families when people are getting split apart like that?
Oh, I would say for sure, yeah. Like when the typically the husband or whatever leaving the family, and going away for a couple weeks at a time, and sometimes even just taking their break, like in the nearest city to where they're working in the oil fields. I think that definitely has an effect on the family and the community. That they're involved with. Going out here and especially working with other people that are not in the greatest shape. I think it's pretty. It's kind of like to single your life out just to go out there and work and make money and make that sort of your primary thing to do during that time. I think it's just it's not a really good move, like overall for somebody's lifestyle.
Mm. And I guess like to what you're saying, like there's also kind of a different way of spending money too. Like there's a difference between buying a speedboat and taking it out on the weekends versus putting it into, I don't know, your community, covering things for your kids or something. It's kind of just a different lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Like most of the people out there were talking about what they're gonna buy, like, with their money. Like when they got back home, they're gonna buy a speedboat, oh, they're gonna buy a new truck and all this. So yeah, definitely being in the community and spending money at the local grocery store is gonna go a lot further than putting money in your boat or whatever. But
Right.
yeah.
So, like, are you using the same skills putting up turbines as you were using in the oil sands? Like, is it, I don't know, is it like technically similar or is it different? Did you have to get more training?
Well, yeah, I will say that the oil sands, like they definitely, have it locked in with like, training and that sort of thing. Like they won't let you do things out there that are, if you're not trained to do so, and working in the wind turbines are definitely a lot more labor intensive kind of job. Like a lot of those oil fields, in my experience anyway, like being a heavy equipment operator out there is like, people are making these pads or like that. So that's a lot of like equipment involved with that or like that, which too with the wind turbines, you're erecting them with cranes and stuff like that. And, but like the maintenance and stuff like that, it's a little different mechanically, I think. Yeah. Probably more mechanical, I would say, like, opposed to like, um, more equipment, being used to get these other sites in the oil sands up or whatever.
Help me understand that. So, like, when you say equipment, like you're just using more gear when you're in the oil sands, whereas here, like, it's more relying on like you or technical abilities, how you sort of gauge the situation, the work you're actually doing. or am I kind of off base?
Well, I think when I say equipment, I mean like the big equipment,
Ah, I
like
see.
excavators and bulldozers, like that, like big equipment, like getting these oil sands for prepped for the refinery to go in, kind of thing. And once they're in place, like the wind turbines, when they're in place, like it's a lot of torquing, a lot of greasing, a lot of like calibrating, like
Mm.
certain pieces of equipment to keep it maintained and serviced.
Right, that
Yeah.
makes sense. So I guess what I'm driving at here, maybe you've already sensed it, is like, do you think this is kind of a path that are available to more oil sands workers in terms of like skill transitioning, going from working on the oil sands to maybe working a little bit closer to home, putting up turbines or other sort of energy infrastructure? Like, do you think that's a path?
Oh, for sure. They're definitely related in that sense, for sure. Like a lot of the skills that are involved with oil refineries and oil sands, all that is very applicable to and can be implemented on the wind turbines for sure. It's a lot of hands-on, sort of labor-intensive, skills that would transfer over from the oil sands to the wind turbines. No doubt. Yeah.
And did you get any extra training or anything when you made the switch, or?
Yeah, I went to wind turbine school in PEI, Summerside. It was a year course that was excellent. They trained, a lot of safety, and that's the main priority when working at all. So, yeah, I got some training before I went, and then and with my experience in mechanically and just growing up farming and stuff like that, it was a easy sort of kind of easy for me to get onto it.
Yeah, it wasn't like a radical transition or anything like that. You don't have to tell us your salary, but are you making roughly the same as you would in the oil sands? Or
Well, I would even say more now, working in the wind turbines because there's such a need for people working in the wind industry now and renewable energy that like they will train you and like the company sometimes will train you and they will give you like a wicked starting wage like with even little to no experience. Like, I think it's, well over 26, 28 an hour in the oil sands. I think I started off like fairly low actually. I was kind of surprised, you know. So there's lots of money to be made in the renewable energy, yeah, for sure.
yeah, that's interesting. It's kind of funny that you were saying you started a little bit lower in the oil sands, where like I think
Yeah.
earlier in the conversation, I'm sure listeners will be familiar with this. You go out west and you make big bucks on the oil sands. Maybe a little misleading if you're just starting out too.
Yeah, for sure. It was misleading. Like I went out there thinking that I was gonna start off on like big $30 an hour or something like that. I think I was making like maybe like 22 in labor. I think I talked to the whoever was in charge there, and once I got out there, it was a reality check. They're like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna start you at this." And I was like, "Geez, I don't know. Like my skills have pretty good skills," and they kind of like used a little bit of reverse psychology on me, saying, "Well, we'll get you up there after a little while," kind of thing, but. It just didn't seem that way in the wind turbine industry. It's just like, okay, this is what you're starting at. We're happy to have you. Let's get it going, kind of thing.
Right. And it sounds like it's sort of better work conditions, it's closer to home, it's sort of a healthy environment. All those things also, I guess, factor in as well.
Yeah, for sure. And like a lot of these wind turbine companies too, like they supply you with like work boots and pants and shirts and hats. Like just those little things go so far in a company, when you start to work for them and people really appreciate that and will work harder and especially with the better wages too, that definitely has a major effect for people.
All right. And like, if you don't mind me asking, before we started recording, we were actually chatting about, I guess, like a sort of personal shift you underwent to that made you get, I guess, on another level, just more interested in the environment, making sure the work you were doing did well with the environment. Could you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so I struggled with mental health when I was young, probably just around high school. A lot of anxiety issues or whatever like that, a lot of worry and stuff. So I ended up getting a psychologist, and this psychologist was like, just really changed my life and really sort of opened me up to my own feelings and how like to navigate around that. And like I gained more clarity and insight into who I was as a person And that really led me to be sort of more clear on what was going on with the environment, you know? So I started to research sort of what was going on with global warming and things like that. And I became like, pretty convinced that, yeah, I think like global warming is an issue because of these certain factors. And so it's interesting how it all started for me.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring that up just because, on a personal note, I had a similar journey in that respect, and I think it's good to, shine a light on that. But it also shows that, like it can also sort of be a process of personal growth too, I guess, getting involved in these things, and it can open doors in your life, whether that's like a new job or new opportunities, and that these things can kind of interact in our lives. I think it's one interesting part of your story.
Yeah, for sure.
So, on that note, one thing I was curious about is you were interested in having more mental health supports like in the workplace, if I'm not mistaken. Could you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so what I would like to see is these companies that come into the communities. I would like to see them implement a program where they have facilitators come in to sort of train their workers on how to deal with like mental health issues. If somebody's dealing with like depression or anger or just not getting along with their fellow workers, to implement like compassionate communication, like ways to like connect better for some of these workers, just support systems basically to not let them get to a point where it becomes a place well, one, to lose workers or whatever like that, but two, just to like take care of their workers, and make sure that they're not going to hit bottom or whatever like that, mentally.
Right, that makes sense because although I guess the work you're doing is socially positive, putting up wind turbines and securing clean energy, that's I think most people would say is a pretty good thing. That still means like, these other aspects of the workplace still need attention, right? People still need to feel good about themselves and each other when they're working.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's definitely number one, like from my experience too, is it's like, I'm just speaking from my experience that like, taking care of mental health, like it just enlightened me and so much to some of life's difficulties, like, and made them a lot more bearable. And learning these skills, has helped me, cope with many adversities in my life.
Mm. And I guess while we're on this note about like, I guess the intersections of like, workplaces and like personal needs, we have a lot of union members and labor people who listen to this show. It's a good part of our audience, actually. And I think one thing that will be on their minds is a lot of renewable energy workers aren't unionized, as far as I'm aware. Like, you kind of have a soapbox right now to talk to labor. Like, what would you tell them needs to happen in order to change that or have labor be more involved in the renewable energy space?
Hmm. Well, I mean, my own opinion, I think unions are great. I've had many cousins and friends working in unions, and they're well taken care of. Their wages are higher. They're good bargaining, like, and getting what they want. So yeah, I think to see that happen would be great because the wages that some of these union workers are wicked. The breaks are good and the safety is great. Like, so that whole team of union people like working together to make, everything the best they can for their workers, I think is a really good thing.
Right, that makes sense to me. And I think sort of what's coming through this conversation is, like you don't have to sort of pick and choose in a lot of these cases, right? You can have good wages, you can have a job that's close to home, you can have a positive work environment, like, and you can be doing something that's, good for the planet. Like this is all within the realm of possibility. You don't have to lower your expectations.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah,
Hmm.
definitely. Having people, working in renewable energy, like as a trades worker or a laborer or just a hands-on type of person is a great thing. Like, like I think it should be seen as a proud way to live, and to have a career in. I've worked on doing hands-on stuff and still do, and the benefit and the strength I get from it is really invigorating. And so I I wouldn't put down like any kid that's in high school that's wanting to do, something like this, for 20 to 25 years. Like, I think it's a great thing, and I think it's very beneficial.
No,
So
more than putting them down, encourage them. Like, tell
yeah,
them to do
yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Definitely encouraging. We won't be putting them down for sure. Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
think it's great, and I think a lot of kids in the city, like like they don't have much hands-on experience, but once you get a tool in their hand, and they find out, wow, this is really cool, like working with my hands and being out here, like they get a hold of it, and they're gone. So
Yeah. And they're doing work that literally changes the world, like putting up renewable energy. That's what it is. It's making the world a more cleaner and like habitable place to live in. And it's interesting because I feel like in my experience, and I'm sure in a lot of listeners' experience, they know a lot of young people who go into post-secondary education or universities, and it's not the right fit for them. But post-secondary training in like a trade or something would have been, and it's you can kind of do it without amassing a lot of the debt that, for example, I got into. That it's just an opportunity. It's an opportunity that shouldn't be overlooked at all.
yeah, for sure. And I think that like a lot of people would really talk about global warming and things like that, and to have my sort of hands in the whole doing it, like gives me a lot more say in the matter. I feel like I play a part in taking care of our planet, and trying to make it a little bit more greener and a little less hot. So
Yeah, it's yeah. I think that makes sense, and I imagine it probably just makes you feel better day in day out. Like you're actually doing, you're contributing a little bit. Maybe it's not like 100% of the challenge, but it's definitely a significant part, and you do it a
for
little bit
sure.
every day.
Yeah, no, for sure. I definitely feel better going to work on a wind turbine rather than going at the oil field, and breathing in some of that smoke that's being released in the air.
Well,
I've
that's the
heard
other thing too, right?
getting
We didn't
getting out
even
there. So
mention, but
yeah, exactly.
I'm sure spending a summer's day putting up a wind turbine, you come home feeling a little bit better than breathing in smoke.
Totally. Thanks for having me on the podcast, and appreciate you, Nick. And yeah, this has been great. It's been a real honor to be on here.
Yeah, likewise, Alex, and thanks for joining us. I always think it's the most important thing just to hear directly from someone who actually does the work, like what their opinions are. And, if we had more of those kinds of conversations or there was more attention paid to it, I think people who haven't already changed their minds would probably change their minds pretty quickly. So thank you. I really appreciate you being so vocal about these issues. Class and Climate is a joint production of the Green Economy Network and the Broadbent Institute. It is hosted and written by myself, Nick Pierce. Clement Nokos created its theme music and edited the show. Jack McClellan contributed show notes and promoted it. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend. You can find our other episodes online at perspectivesjournal.ca.